So the start of 2024 just happened here in Bahrain, and it was a pretty boring race to say the least. There's a lot of talking points to go over. I want to kind of go over every single team, at least in the slightest. We got to talk about the max domination. Ferrari stepping it up big time on the plates. Where do Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, and all these other teams actually stand, and will we have a competitive 2024 season? Wanted to thank you guys so much for supporting the channel like you guys do before starting this video, and it's a very long 2024 season that I hope will be a much more eventful one than here in Bahrain. If you guys stick with me, I hope you guys enjoy the channel. If you're new here, please subscribe and like that. It'd mean a lot to me. Let's get into the video. The first team that I want to talk about is Alpine. The Sauber car actually performed a lot better than I thought it would. The Sauber was very impressive on race pace. I do think the car is much better than it was showing in this race because tire degradation is important here, and they actually did a pretty well darn job. Guan Yu Zhou was up there for a long period of time. Bottas had unfortunately damage from the beginning. That was, I think, mainly caused by Nico Hülkenberg into Lance, but the actual car seemed pretty good. Now talking about Haas also looked a lot better. Haas on the race pace was much better. They seem to actually be holding up their tires a lot better than they've usually been doing in these races, especially here in Bahrain, it being such a huge tire degradation track and them doing very well. I was quite impressed with the Haas team, and I do think that their new team principal is actually making a difference. I thought that actually replacing Gunther was the better option. It seems like that is all playing to the hand now because Komatsu is really doing a good job of kind of keeping the expectations low, and they were low going into this. They were much better than the Alpine, which I already made my point on, but the actual Haas car doesn't seem like the Butter Shredder 3.0, which is nice. I really do want to see this team succeed. Why wouldn't we? It's an underdog team. I really hope they continue it throughout the year. Williams is also a team that I think did pretty good. They're pretty much on pace with those RBs, and the RB is the next thing that I wanted to talk about. It's kind of a bottom five to me, in my opinion. I think Alpine is still a little bit of a ways away. Sauber, Williams, RB, they're all pretty close in that bunch. Haas as well. They're all pretty close on race pace and qualifying pace. With the new regulations, reliability has been such a key factor because it really has not been an unreliable season in 23, 22 kind of with Ferrari cars, but in general, it's been a very reliable season for these cars, and they've been able to go through their parts at a very conservative pace, so not very much penalties, and overall not many failures in the races. I mean, it's very rare we get no DNFs in the first race. We got 0. So, I mean, it just comes to tell you that these cars are becoming more and more reliable. So cars like the RB and the Williams that are right on the edge fighting with what is now Aston Martin, it's going to be hard for them to actually get points. The top 5 kind of seems right in that spot to where they're hard to catch, but through the season, I do think it's going to become more and more competitive. The actual qualifying sessions between all these teams, there was only like a second between them. So qualifying is going to be outstanding in 2024, even better than it was in 23. And on certain tracks, maybe like Monaco, we could see a different race winner for that reason. And throughout the season, I think we're going to see different race winners regardless, but the actual bottom 5 seem to be signified in those spots. I do think the little RB drama between Yuki and Daniel was kind of the most entertaining part of this race, to be honest. I actually think that the decision to swap made no sense to me. Now, Yuki was a little, dirty on the way they swapped. It definitely wasn't a good position for them to swap into, so Daniel was kind of put on the back foot. Then Max Verstappen passed him, them being the back marker, they had to back off. But regardless, what could he have done? He wasn't catching the Astons, who were actually in 10th place. He could have caught K-Mag. It wouldn't have really mattered much for the race anyways. So I didn't really understand the drama between putting them in that situation and just making Yuki mad. They already had Yuki on the worst strategy, even though Yuki probably had a chance at catching the Aston Martins. Maybe it was possible. I do think that RB team is still lacking that pace because Stroll literally made it from 20th to where he was now because of the crash and a whole spin and being like 15 seconds down in the beginning. So I don't really think they had the pace, but it was unfortunate that Yuki didn't have a chance to actually try with a proper strategy, and then they kind of do this to him. I felt bad in that situation. Daniel Ricciardo did a really good job of also making a comeback as well, but he had the better strategy, in my opinion, the more optimal one. We'll have to see. It's going to be pretty close between those two teammates. Now getting really into the top 5, Let's briefly cover them and then talk about, I think, the biggest talking points, which to me is Ferrari and Red Bull. But the Aston Martin fell back. I think it's a kind of snap back to reality for people like me and people that love Aston Martin. Realistically, it was going to happen anyways. I think they did a good job with this car, but every other team has taken that next step, and it's going to be very close. Are they far behind? No, but they picked a really weird strategy for Alonso. Lance was crashed into. Realistically, I think they're probably like 2/10 or 3/10 down on the pace of the next car, but that isn't a huge margin, and that can be made up pretty easily with a big upgrade in the season and a little bit of development, because they had low expectations going into the qualifying, exceeded those expectations. Now it's time to do that in the race. Now, as for McLaren, they impressed me. I think they did so well in a race that's been so bad for them for so many years to get a double points finish, to compete with the Mercedes, and actually have pretty promising pace to actually make it further in the season. That's the team to look out for. I think McLaren has proven in this race that that is a very menacing team for the rest of 2024. I actually think that they can be favorites to catch Red Bull if they continue what they're doing. And they have a huge package coming up within 6 to 7 races where they expect that car to be somewhere to the level of what they wanted from winter testing. Now, sadly, they haven't gotten into that state, but I think it will get there at some point. Mercedes is the next team that I want to mention. I think it's another team that is going to step up more and more. It's a brand new concept. They did really well. Both of them were managing issues. I think the Mercedes car actually has a lot more promise than was actually shown in the Bahrain race. They did pretty well. They're much better than the W14 or even 13. I know the 13 got a podium, but that was due to unreliability and a bit of luck. This car actually looks much more stable. It seemed like the drivers were actually pretty consistent. Yes, there were some lockups, but everybody had lockups throughout the whole entire race with the exception of Max. So there's still a lot of hope for Mercedes fans and for Mercedes to actually step it up in the season, because it's just the very start. So you can't judge it that quickly off of what's going to happen. But the car looks much better and much more stable than before. And I think tracks where cooling isn't as important as it is here in Bahrain, they will do much better. They had a cooling problem. That power unit was probably getting fried due to the way that they were driving the car. There's a lot more promise to come from Mercedes. Now, the biggest talking points, as I said, Ferrari. Ferrari, to me, what a step up. Now, not only in race pace, in qualifying, they were great. They could have been on pole position. And if they had the clean air, this team is competing with Red Bull. Now, Max, I don't know. But Red Bull, yeah, they can compete with Perez. They can fight. Carlos, if he didn't fight with Leclerc as much as he did and maybe lose a little bit of pace, he could have beaten Perez in this race. We could have had a 1 with Max and a 2 with Carlos Sainz. I truly believe that. I think the car is much more stable. Maybe Leclerc was handling an issue. Maybe something was wrong with the brakes. They were saying something about the front left tire and the front right tire being different temperatures and spiking in different moments. That's why he was having a hard time on locking up, and also saying that the steering wheel was pulling a lot right. So that's still an issue for them to resolve, but this is a simple base car. The RB20 is a very upgraded car. Yes, they're going to bring upgrades. Yes, this car is going to evolve and become faster, but that Ferrari has a lot of potential. And the Ferrari car, to me, looks like the team that's actually going to get some race wins this year. I do think Mercedes, McLaren, and potentially Aston Martin, if they really step it up, can get there. But Ferrari is the biggest challenger here in 2024. And Carlos Sainz looks like a man on a mission. It was nice watching Carlos. A couple of those beautiful dives, driving aggressively. He wasn't even really that like friendly over the radio and stuff. You can tell this guy's got a chip on his shoulder, and I like that, because here he has to prove. He has to prove what he's worth, which to me is silly. The guy is an amazing driver, but if he's going to take it to that next level with the next team that he's with, maybe he gets the Merc drive. We'll have to see where it goes from here. But very impressed with Carlos. Genuinely a beautiful and I think pretty much perfect race from him. Outraced his teammate. Had the pace to actually catch Checo. Tire strategy was better for the Red Bull car. And speaking about the Red Bull, to get into them last, congrats to the team again. I mean, phenomenal race pace, phenomenal car. Max was pitch perfect. And Perez had a good race. Got to give it to him. Both of them had a great race. They weren't just running away from each other the whole entire time. Yeah, it was like a 20-second difference, but Perez had to start a little bit from 6th. I think Perez actually looked very aggressive as well. He looked like he had a chip on his shoulder too. He's like, I have something to prove this year, and I'm going to prove it, which I thought was very nice to watch in general. And Max had a pitch perfect race. Drove the car so efficiently. There were no mistakes from this guy. it's going to be tough to beat Max Verstappen in 2024. Do I think it's impossible? Do I think teams are going to run away with it? No. But I do think to catch Max, it's going to take some next level engineering. I'm talking about that Adrian Newey level of engineering. Is it possible? Yes. Very improbable, though, that it's going to happen. But I'm still excited for the rest of the season. But we need better races than Bahrain, at least for 2024. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It'd mean the world. And peace.